Welcome to Slooh, where there really is no better place to learn to explore space together. And in this episode, what have we got? The latest episode of Practical Astronomy. We are going to be focusing on using Slooh, but we'll also venture into your own backyards if you've got any questions about doing some astronomy with your own equipment. And at this time of year, coming up to Christmas, quite a few telescopes are bought, but, it can be an immensely frustrating exercise and an expensive one as well. I think there are probably more telescopes under stairs and in dusty cupboards than actually being used. Now then, I have just got to sort one little thing out. Do excuse me. Now, although I'm going to be sharing my screen throughout the livecast, if you're watching and listening over at slooh.com, you can follow along yourself as we navigate around the site. Now, our new audio app is just giving me a problem, actually, means that you'll be able to listen to the audio wherever you are on the site, which means that you can navigate around the site and see everything at kind of full resolution on your own monitors. Now, if you're already a member, or if you're not already a member, or maybe you're registered as Slooh Crew, please sign up tonight for an apprentice or astronomer membership. You'll not only be supporting our mission to teach the world to explore space in a commercially free sanctuary, but you'll also enjoy loads more features, including using Slooh's telescopes at our flagship observatory at the Institute of Astrophysics of the Canary Islands, and our Southern Hemisphere Observatory in Chile, which will be opening up in about an hour's time. That's hosted by the Pontifical Catholic University down there in Chile. So you've got the entirety of the night sky, Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere. And don't forget, if you're a parent, teacher, college professor, please check out our new classroom and college astrolab program. So let anybody know if they might be interested in that. Now, last week, we've already had a great week of live astronomy. Last week, we watched the best meteor shower of the year, the Geminids, and we also had that historic close approach to Earth last night of that mysterious asteroid comet hybrid 3200 Phaethon, although the weather didn't really cooperate. But that's the very object that generated the Geminids early on in the week. We also had some terrific solar activity in the Canary Islands Slooh Solar Telescope. That enormous prominence, I hope you saw that. If you didn't, maybe we're going through my pictures a little bit later, so I might show you some of the snaps that I took of that. But more of that and what we have to look forward to in an hour's time during the What's Up This Week livecast. And of course, Slooh storyteller Helen Avery will have the latest edition of her constellation stories in 2 hours' time. And this week, Helen is going to be telling us about the constellation of Auriga. And that's one that I really don't know very much about. And I know that Helen has scheduled some of the best objects that are in that constellation to watch live during her live cast. So a packed, morning, day or evening or night, wherever you are. I guess it's just turned midnight here in the UK, which is the same as the Canary Islands Observatory as well. Anyway, what are we up to now in today's episode of Practical Astronomy? Well, as always, we're always going to start off these Practical Astronomy livecasts with a very brief recap how to reserve missions on the Slooh telescope. So anyone new to Slooh can see just how easy it is. But then we're going to discuss the Slooh robotic telescopes in general, and there are loads of them. But how do you know the best one to use for different types of objects? Well, we're going to be talking all about that. So if you want to know the best telescope to capture Jupiter as it's returning in our pre-dawn skies, or maybe you want to capture the enormous Andromeda galaxy. Which telescope do you use? Two very, very different objects and very different sizes there. We are then, actually, I was going to talk about telling the time. And you may have seen around the website, and you'll see in a minute when we go through the reservation system, you'll see this weird kind of time zone called UTC. But I'm not going to cover that in this show. I'm going to cover that in the What's Up This Week show in an hour's time. Because the time and that UTC thing is really caught up in what's visible and when the observatories are open as well. But we are in the show now going to be looking at in slightly more depth at my pictures. You might remember that we covered this last week, but this week we're going to be looking at the my pictures area, which is the area where all of your Slooh captures from the telescopes are stored securely for you. And tonight we're going to be looking at galleries and creating both private galleries to organize your images and public galleries that you can share with friends, family, other Slooh members. So that's a pretty cool feature that we're going to take a look at. And then we are going to take a very quick look, and we might refer to this actually, we might hop over there at several different times of the live cast. We're going to hop over to the discussion forums, and there's something for everyone there, but it's an absolute mine of information, and you reach that from communities. And that's where, if you want to ask any questions, then you can hop up to community, you can go up to discussions, or in fact you can go straight to courses, the courses discussion. And if you've got any questions for me during this part of the show, then you can hop in here, hop into this one, and you can just post a question in there. And of course, don't forget, if you hop into the live cast and you've got any questions for Helen Avery about Auriga and the story of Auriga, then make sure you post them up here. I think Helen's already got some great questions in there already. So hop over there to the discussion boards, and we'll check in. Remind me, I must check in at the end of this live cast, make sure we've covered all of the questions. Now, what I promised first, for anybody new at Slooh, how easy it is to set up your own mission on the Slooh telescopes. That's you controlling the Slooh robotic telescopes. And when I say mission, what we do at Slooh is we divide up the telescope time while they're operating, depending on which telescope it is, into either 5 or 10-minute slots. And each one of those slots is called a mission. So that's what we say. If you're reserving your mission on the Slooh telescopes, that's what we're talking about. So let's go over and take a very quick look at just how easy it is. Now, no guesses here where we're going to do this. Left-hand navigation bar, this is it down here. It's really simple. The new website is just so much easier to use than the old one, because old hands will know there's just so much information at Slooh. It's quite difficult sometimes, it has been in the past, to organize it so that you can get exactly where you need to. And by the way, don't neglect the bottom of our page. The bottom of all of the pages on the website have a bundle of shortcut links. So don't forget, you can always go to that. In fact, what we can do is we can use this one now actually, and we'll go to telescopes and we'll go to reserve telescopes. Now, the easiest way of reserving your own mission on the Slooh telescopes is what we call Slough Recommend. So here it is. And on this page, we've got a curated list of the best objects this week. And this week, we're going to talk about this, in What's Up This Week in an hour's time. But what we've got here is we've got Capella. That's the bright star in the constellation of Auriga, which is what Helen's talking about later. But we've got no moon this week. So look what we've got here. Moonless skies make it a perfect time to capture dark nebulae, like the famous Horsehead Nebulae. So we're recommending that for this week. And if I just press that make a reservation button, then it should pop up like that. I can add a tag in here if I want to make sure that I can remember or add any information about it. And I'm going to confirm that. And that's it. Look, this is telling us we have reserved our mission. And this has been reserved for me tonight at 01:30. There's that time thing that I was talking to you about earlier, but gives it to you in Eastern time, Pacific times 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 Pacific, 01:30 UTC. And it's using the Canary 1 telescope. Got it. Thanks. That's it. And look over here, Paul's upcoming missions, and there we can see it. So Slough Recommends is the absolute easiest way. Now, I happen to know that the Canary. Oh, there's one of my favorites down there, by the way, Whirlpool Galaxy. Oh, if you haven't set up your own mission for the Whirlpool Galaxy, that is not one to miss. That is so beautiful. But the other thing that caught my eye up here is one of the best objects in the southern hemisphere, which is visible, of course, from the Chile observatory. And this is the Tarantula Nebulae. The live images look so cool of this enormous nebula. It really is one of the most stunning in the sky. In fact, I'm going to go there. I'm going to say that is my favorite nebula in the entire sky. My wife wouldn't like that because she doesn't like spiders so much. But anyway, I'm going to also make a reservation for that on the Chile 1 telescope tonight. I'm going to add a tag in there so I can remember what I was doing when I set this one up. Absolutely. And there's my confirmation. Okay, so that's not visible until a little bit later. And quite nicely, what this does in Slough Recommends is it automatically picks the best time and the best telescope to use. So that's kind of a little bit pertinent for what we're going to talk about a little bit later about which telescope to use for different object types. Now, we'll quickly flick through the other options on how to set up a mission. Browse Slooh 500. Now, this is a curated list of what we believe the best 500 objects are in the night sky. And this kind of changes depending on what time of year it is and what's visible when. But it's this curated list, and what you know is that any object you pick out of here, it's going to look pretty good, or it might just be absolutely fascinating from either a scientific point of view or where it is or whether or not it's been depicted in art or culture or science. So let's take a look. First of all you have to do, 3 steps you can see here, 1, 2, 3. Select the category of object, choose a specific object, and then the object summary, which is just like a confirmation. Let's have a look at stars first of all, and you can see here it says calculating best time and the best telescope to use for each one of these objects. So there it goes. Now, I happen to know that there's another star here that Helen's going to be talking about later in the constellation of Auriga called Almaz. And I've never seen this star, and this is a new object that was only added to the Slough 500 this week. So I fancy one of those. And here it is. It tells us some information about it. So, okay, Epsilon Aurigae, a peculiar eclipsing binary star. It's a visible star is an F-type supergiant. So that's what we can see in the images. While its eclipsing component, which means there's another star there, is quite mysterious. It's thought to be a dusty disk surrounding the star. So not an eclipsing star, but just a dust cloud. Their eclipses over 24 years apart and last for 2 years. Well, I wonder whereabouts in that whole sequence it is. That's going to be quite cool. Anyway, all I have to do is say schedule mission. And once again, this has gone off and it's looked at all of the available telescopes, all of the available mission slots, and it's picked the very best one for it. And here it is, Canary 2 telescope, which is actually the best telescope for stars. We'll talk about that once again in this next section. I'm just going to add a tag to that, and there you can see it's got a time there as well. I just want to confirm that. Yes, please, and it's confirmed to me. That's when my mission is. So there are 2 very easy ways of making a Slough reservation on the telescopes. But if you're an astronomer member, you might want to pick a specific telescope and a specific time that you want that particular object to run. So this time we're going to use reserve my telescope. Here we go. And we can flick between the two observatories. There's the Chile Observatory, there's the Canary Islands telescopes. Actually, I'm going to go for the Chile telescopes tonight. And this is, you can see here, there's a scroller for which day, so it automatically shows you tonight's schedule. So Sunday, there we go. You can see the first mission it's scheduled by us is Neptune, and then you can see which members scheduled what. Peter S has got a whole stack in there. I wonder what he's collecting at the moment. That's quite interesting. It is always pretty interesting having a look to see what everybody else is reserving. There are some people here who are making celestial coordinate missions, and those are not specifically to any specific object, but to a specific location in the sky. And they may be searching or monitoring comets or asteroids. So there's a good way of doing that. And by the way, if you wanted to, what did Peter have up here? He had, what's this one? I don't know this one. NGC 104. So this is a cluster of stars. Is it? I don't know. Let's have a look. I'm going to piggyback on that mission. And when we say, I hadn't covered this yet, when we say piggyback on a mission, there you go. Strap yourself in. You're joining a pre-scheduled mission by Peter. That's the time. That's the telescope. Now, that means that I'm going to also get on top of that particular mission and get all of the images from it, which will be stored to my pictures, which we're going to look at a little bit later. So there's an added feature there that I think a lot of members don't actually know. You can piggyback on other members' missions, kind of outside of your own quota of setting up your own missions. But you can also, of course, watch live everybody's mission. So I'm just scrolling down here and I'm just waiting to see. I was trying to find a free slot. So there's still a bundle of slots left open actually for tonight. So what have we got down here? One right at the end of the night. We like to leave the ones at the end of the night. Ooh, look at this. Here's one we've scheduled at the very last slot of the night because Jupiter is just returning to our pre-dawn skies. Now, you won't be able to select this at the moment because it's not high enough. And what we're having to do is we're having to override certain limits that the telescopes have on them generally because Jupiter is only around 16 degrees above the horizon. So it's very, very low. So don't expect brilliant images from that, but it will be the first images. I know somebody caught the great red spot last night. So anyway, let's take a look here. Let's go. So you can see here there are three different ways. We can choose by popular object, select by catalog number, enter coordinates. So, but the thing that makes this different is that we're choosing the telescope and we're choosing the time to do it. So this one, popular objects, if you're just starting out, once again, it's the best way of doing it, really. Nebulae, we got no moonlight, so let's pick a nebulae. Oh, there was a great one the other day. A member shared in the discussion boards his image of the Cone Nebula. That was pretty cool. But here's a nice one, right? The Eta Carinae Nebula. This is pretty nice. Now you can piggyback on this particular mission, if you like, a little bit later. And here we go. It's got the description here. One of the largest star-forming regions in the entire Milky Way. The Carina Nebula shines brightly about 7,000 light years from Earth. This massive complex includes 8 massive star clusters, a number of small nebulas, and many unique stars, including the famous giant Eta Carinae and WR25, the brightest star in our galaxy, the Milky Way. The giant star Eta Carinae, look that up on the internet after this live cast, and you'll find some diagrams of it in comparison to our sun. It is mind-bogglingly big. I want it's a bit kind of scary almost, but anyway, listen, have a look at this. So piggyback on my mission tonight at 07:15. Absolutely, yes, please. Great. So listen, I'm not going to go into any more detail. You can see there, I hope, just how easy it is to schedule your own missions. And of course, you can come along here and you can select tomorrow night or the next night. And you can actually schedule the telescopes out 7 days in advance. So anyway, it's probably a good time to step on to the second thing that we're covering tonight. And that is, we can see here, we've got the telescope here in Chile. If we hop over to the Canary Islands, we've got 4 here. 4 telescopes. We've got Canary 1, we've got Canary 2, which actually has 2 telescopes in it. We have Canary 3, and we have Canary 4. Now, each one of these has a slightly different name, and we've tried to give them names to kind of give you a little bit of a prompt in what they're good for. Now, first of all, the Canary 1 telescope. I think let's hop over actually to the telescopes and all telescopes page. And we'll hop down here and see what it says about this. So here we are, we're still at the Slough Canary Islands Observatory. There it is, 8,000 feet up. The actual volcanic summit is another 4,000 on top of that. But here we can see we're offline tonight because we've got a bit of bad weather, unfortunately, over there. But here is the telescope card. So here it is, home to Slough's premier system, the mighty half-meter telescope. So what are we talking about when we say a half-meter telescope? I mean, people in the US might not even know what a meter is, but it's about 3-4 feet, about 4 feet really. So what are we talking about? Is it the length of the telescope? Is it the height of the telescope? No, it's whenever we talk about telescope sizes, we talk about the size of their primary optics. And when I say primary optics, that might be in a refracting telescope, maybe like the Canary 2 ultra wide field telescope or the Canary 3 telescope. It's the size of the lens on the front of, in fact, not the Canary 3, sorry, but the Canary 2 ultra wide field, and actually the Chile ultra wide field as well. It's like a kind of traditional telescope, and it has a big lens on the back, and you'd normally put an eyepiece on the back if you were going to look through it, but in fact we put CCD cameras on instead. So it's the diameter anyway of either that lens, or in the case of most of Slough's telescopes, it's the size, the diameter of their mirrors. So the mighty half-meter telescope has a mirror collecting all of those photons coming in from these far distant objects, 1/2 meter in diameter. That's 21 inches across. Now, if you wanted to buy a telescope like that, the telescope itself is going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars, probably $30,000 or $40,000. But that's not the end of it. This thing is massive. It's huge. Some of you may have seen the great video that I made when I was at the observatory, when we were mounting that telescope on the back of the telescope mount. And that's the thing. You know, that $30,000, $40,000 isn't the only thing you've got to spend. You've got to have an incredibly good telescope mount to put it on. And it's the mount that points the telescope when you're controlling it every night. So what's a telescope like the mighty half-meter telescope good for? Well, I've already said it's like a huge light bucket. It's gathering up all of those photons, and it gathers up a huge number of them because it's huge. So you may have guessed already, but this telescope is best for faintish objects, faint and large objects, in fact. So galaxies or nebulae. Here's the Triangulum galaxy taken with this telescope by Peter. Let's take a close-up look at that. Look at that image. I'm just going to check, make sure that you're seeing that. Yes, you are. This is actually one of my favorite objects, and we see this in such a lot of detail that all of the stars that we see in this image are actually in our own galaxy, the Milky Way. But what we can see, these purple knots here where I'm pointing, that's actually a nebula in that distant galaxy where new stars are being born. It's like the Orion Nebula in our own galaxy. But look at the detail, and this is what the half-meter telescope is superb at. It's gathering up all of the photons from that distant object. So it's really, really sensitive. So that's what you want to use it for. If you try and book up the Canary 1/2 meter telescope to image a planet like Jupiter or Mars, which are returning in the morning sky, you won't see them in the list anywhere. Why? You won't see the moon in the list for the half-meter telescope because they're too bright. That telescope is so good at collecting light that those objects would be far too bright and overwhelm the incredibly sensitive CCD camera, which is on the back of it. Now, if you come over to the All Telescopes page, you can kind of hop down here and you can see the telescope specifications here. So if you like a lot of information, you've got it all here. It tells you the size of it, the specification of it, the type of camera that we've got on it, and also the field of view. And in fact, there's a post in the discussion boards that I put there, which compares all of the different fields of view. So this is how much of the sky each telescope can see. So go over into the discussion boards and take a quick look at that. So, okay, that's Canary 1/2 meter, and that is the best telescope to use for the very faintest objects. And actually, a lot of our comet and asteroid hunting members use that telescope when they're trying to monitor incredibly faint asteroids and comets. It really is superb at that. Now, missions on that as well last for 10 minutes to gather even more light up. But let's hop over then to Canary 2. So here we go, includes 2 telescopes. Here it says on the telescope card, includes 2 telescopes, both ideal for capturing large objects such as galaxies and nebulae. Now, the 1/2 meter telescope I said was 20 inches in diameter. That was the size of its primary mirror. The Canary 2 wide field telescope isn't much smaller. It's 17 inches in diameter. So it's roughly as good as the 1/2 meter, but these missions are 5 minutes long, not 10 minutes long. And it's not quite as good as gathering up those photons. But I'll tell you, most amateur astronomers would kill. They'd sell their families to own a telescope like that, let alone one that's actually located at a world-class observatory site like the Canary Islands. So it also says, though, that it's got this second telescope. And this is a little telescope that sits on top of it. So you've got the big telescope there, and then you've got this little telescope that sits on top. So let's just take a look actually at this image. This is of the Trifid Nebulae. Look at that. This one was taken by me actually. And you can see here, it's incredibly good for teasing out all of those faint objects. Now, I didn't do any processing on this image. This is as it came out of the telescope. This is what we watched live in that particular mission, which is pretty cool, isn't it? But anyway, let's go back, because there's this little telescope also, which is on the top of it. And this is what's called it's called an ultra wide field refractor. So this is more like a telescope that you'd think of, and it's not that big. The lens on the front of it is just over 3 inches. But what this gives us is a very wide field of view. And as you can see here by this example photo, one of the benefits of this particular telescope is that it's great at capturing a full disk view of the moon. Look at this one. I mean, this is absolutely cracking. And don't forget, I always recommend that you don't actually capture the moon when it's full. Always go for these lesser phases when you can start seeing some of that amazing detail coming in as well. So that's the ultra wide field. So when you schedule the Canary 2 telescope for a mission, you actually get images from both of those telescopes of the same object. So you kind of get 2 lots of images in one mission, which is pretty cool. Now we come to 2 new telescopes, which are far more specific and dedicated. They're very good at doing certain things. And we only installed these only came online this year with version 3 of Slooh. And the first one is the Canary 3 telescope. And in fact, it might interest you to know that this really isn't a telescope. Its proper name is an astrograph. And that's because it has no place to put an eyepiece. You can't use this telescope to look through visually. You can only use it with a camera, and that camera actually sits in front of the telescope. If you hop over the discussion pages, you'll see that there's some pictures of it in there to see this peculiar thing. And hopefully the development team will get the Constellation cam, which is sitting on top of that Canary 3 astrograph. And we call this the Canary 3 Deep Sky astrograph. And if you're not aware of what a deep sky object is, people call it a DSO. They're these faint objects, they're galaxies, they're nebulae. And this particular telescope has an incredibly large field of view. Now, if you want a really cracking image of the Andromeda Galaxy, use this telescope, because the entire Andromeda Galaxy, and it is huge in the sky, fits within a single frame. It really is a terrific telescope, and members have been getting some really cracking results with this. Go over to the discussion boards, have a look for some of these. And here you can see, once again, if you do the flip on the telescope card, you can see all of the specifications for that telescope. So if you want, and by the way, look, here's the constellation cam as well, and this is going to be exactly what it says. It's going to be terrific for capturing entire constellations. And in fact, we're in the process of adding all of the constellations, all of the 88 constellations in the night sky, to the Slough 500 catalogue. That would be quite cool. But anyway, deep sky, look at this. This was an image. Who was this taken by? I don't know who this was taken by. It doesn't have an image credit on it. Here we go. This is the Orion Nebula, and the field of view is so big with this telescope that we're also seeing at the top of it up here, we're seeing the Running Man Nebula as well, and they're very, very close. And I think it was Dave Larkin, he's put together a beautiful mosaic using this particular telescope. And a mosaic is where you take different images of different fields around certain objects, and then you join them together to make one enormous image. So just off this, we've got the Flame Nebula, and we've also got the Horsehead Nebula, all within this really quite tight space. But you can see here the amount of detail that this particular telescope, the Canary 3 Deep Sky, is pulling out for these terrific objects. Now let's move on quickly to Canary 4. Canary 4 we call the Canary 4 solar system objects, and it's best for capturing the planets and the moon. But there aren't that many planets visible at the moment. As I said, Mars and Jupiter are only just returning to our pre-dawn skies. Uranus and Neptune, they are visible. We can see their moons, but otherwise they're kind of quite underwhelming in some of the telescope views because they're so distant. And they're quite small. And Saturn, of course, Saturn is at conjunction at the moment with the Sun, which means from our perspective, it's behind the Sun, so we can't see it at all. But this telescope is also terrific for smaller nebulae, smaller bright nebulae, and most of them are planetary nebulae. Now, these have got nothing whatsoever to do with planets, but they looked like planets through early telescopes. So when William Herschel, who discovered Uranus just down the road from me in the Roman city of Bath in the southwest of England, he thought that a lot of these objects looked like planets. So he coined the term planetary nebulae, but they're not. They are nebulae themselves. They're actually the death throes of, the death throes of a sun-like star. So once again, you've got all of the details. Now there's no other telescope sitting on top of this particular one, so it is very, very specialized. And look at this. This is one of the best images that we had of Saturn this year. I love this. Let's see if we can get this a bit larger. Look at that. Isn't that cracking? So this was earlier on in the year, and the amount of detail and color, and of course regular Slough members, long-time Slough members will know that I'm a bit of a Jupiter fan. So I am really looking forward. This is going to be the first apparition, which is a viewing season for Jupiter, where we'll be able to monitor the entire apparition using this new Canary 4 solar system telescope. So planets, close-ups of the moon, and small planetary nebulae like the Cat's Eye Nebulae or the well-known Ring Nebula M57. And there's a whole bunch of others as well. There's the Bowtie Nebulae. That one looks terrific in the Canary 4 telescope. And then there's one more telescope here to talk about, and that's the Canary 5 telescope. Now, if there was ever a specialized telescope, it's this one, because this one can only capture the sun, but in glorious H alpha, which means we're only looking at the light in the wavelength of H alpha. So this tiny little telescope, and it is quite small because you don't need a big telescope like the half-meter telescope, because you don't need to capture lots of light. The sun is so bright, even when it's filtered through these special H alpha filters, and you can see the kind of detail we get here. Look at this. We overlay actually on the images from the Slough Canary 5 solar telescope, this little scale Earth, to show you just how enormous some of these features are. So that's very specialist, and keep an eye open for that. In fact, there's quite a lot of solar activity at the moment, which has generated what's called a G1 solar storm tonight. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, or quite north, maybe North America, certainly Canada, or northern Europe, you might get to see, if you have clear skies tonight, some aurorae, because that solar storm, that G1 solar storm, will be pummeling the Earth's atmosphere with high energy particles from the sun. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on Chile, but if we hopped over to the Chile telescopes, here we've got a single telescope system. We hope to bring Chile 2 on later on next year. But the Chile 1 telescope is really quite it's a jack of all trades. And I wouldn't say it's not a master of any. It's really good at doing a lot of things, whether or not that's capturing a tiny planet, or whether it's capturing that tarantula nebulae that we talked about at the top of the show. Oh, look at this. And just by chance, as if I had organized this already, which I actually hadn't, here we've got a picture of that very same object, the Tarantula Nebula. This one is by David Malek. David does some of the best post-processing. So this one, he's gathered up all of the data from that Canary 1 wide field telescope, and he's done some processing on it to make it even better. So there you go. So that hopefully gives you a little bit of a better idea on which telescopes to use for which type of object. Basically, if it's large and faint, go for the Canary 1 and Canary 2 telescopes. If it's a very, very large object, or nebulae, fairly bright nebulae, then go for the Canary 3 deep sky object camera, deep sky telescope. If it's a small planetary nebulae or a close-up of the moon or the planets, then go for the Canary 4 telescope. And of course, you've only got one option when it comes to the sun. So keep your eyes open this week, because hopefully we'll see some more of that solar activity in the Canary 5 solar telescope. So now listen, I told you we were going to cover what is UTC and telling the time, astronomical time, in this live cast, but actually we're going to do that in the next live cast, which starts in 20 minutes time, in the What's Up This Week live cast. But now we're going to shift on to using my pictures. Now, you might remember that we covered this subject last week a little bit. So we hop up to telescopes, and instead of going to reserve telescopes or all telescopes, we go to my pictures. So this is the area where all of your images from all of your missions, both your own reservations and those that you piggybacked on, and any that you've snapped live while you're watching live missions, because don't forget, you can watch everybody's missions live, right? This is where all of the resulting photos land up in your My Pictures area. And we separate it in several ways. First of all, we've got missions. So here you can see I've done 2,193 missions, and here they all are. They're displayed to us as a thumbnail. If we hopped into one of these, oh look, this is the open star cluster in Gemini that we were talking about last week. So we'll click on here, and it takes us then to the actual images that were within that mission. So here we can see all the information about it. It was taken with the Canary 3 telescope, the deep sky one, which is really good for large objects like this. It tells us the date and stuff like that. We can click on one of these images and look at it in greater detail. We can add an observation log in here. If you missed any of this last week, then hop in. You can watch all of the archive shows. If you just go to Livecast and browse Livecast, you can see all of the. In fact, let's hop over there now. Here we go, recent Livecast. So you can hop back through any of these that we've done. Don't forget, you can see Dr. Paige Goffrey's intro to astronomy course as well. But let's go back to my pictures because we want to talk about galleries. So this one, the default view is missions. That's what members told us they wanted their default view to come up. But also this is a useful one as well, the photo roll. I've got over 8,000 images captured in here. And this is just like your phone or mobile photo roll. It just shows you every single image that you've captured in reverse chronological order. And in here you can see I've got some of my captures from the Slooh Canary 5 solar telescope when we were looking at this enormous prominence. How cool was that? And you can see here I've already added an observation log and stuff like that. And we can filter these. So if we go back to photo roll, you know, we went through all of this, the various ways that you can filter your images by time, by tags that you've added. You've already seen that I've been adding tags to some of my images. You can go on time, just do the last 24, 48 hours, last month, week, year, whatever. Select object types, filter by object types or by telescopes. So those were all covered in last week's show. But what I want to talk about tonight is galleries. And what you can see here is I haven't had time to create more than one gallery. So galleries are displayed once again as a thumbnail, and it just shows you one of your images. So this particular gallery that I've created is called the Slough Solar Telescope. It tells me when I created it. I can delete the gallery if I want. I don't think so, thank you very much. But if I click on it, it will show me all of the images that I've added to that particular gallery. And one of the other nice little things you'll see up here is that this gallery I've made public. So if I just click that little icon there, now it's private. Nobody else can see this. But if I click that little image there, that's now a public gallery. So I can give anybody the link to this gallery and they can see all of my images within it. So how do you create a gallery and how do you add images to it? Well, let's take a look. Let's hop over to galleries. Now, I've only done this once before. So in fact, I think the best way of creating a gallery, if I recall, is hopping over to photo roll. And actually where I'm going to go, actually it was missions I wanted to go, because I think I'm going to start a collection or a gallery based on what constellation it's in. So here we've got these images of the open star cluster M35, which is in the constellation of Gemini. So here you can see some icons here. We've got add to gallery, we've got delete the image, we've got download the image, and if you remember last week we went through sharing the image and that shares it to the Slooh timeline on the home page. But here we want to create a new gallery. So we can see here the only one I've got is Slooh Solar Telescope, but I'm going to click up here, the plus button. Come along, don't fail me now. Oh, sorry, I've got to type it in. Sorry, being a bit slow tonight. Gemini. So this is where I'm going to collect all of the objects in the constellation of Gemini. So there we go. So it's created it. There it is. And that's the gallery that I want to add that image to. So it's there. And up here we can see galleries. 2 now I have. So pop up here. And there it is. Gemini. Now you could, in fact, let's do it. Let's hop over back to this image. Actually, that should have updated by now. Okay, we'll check that out a little bit later. Should have been in there. Let's take another look. I'm going to go back. Oh, look, we've got Gemini Nebulae. Look at that. Forgotten I'd done this one. So that's not a very good image, so I'm not going to put that one in there. Let's hop back. I'm going to go back to the star cluster then. And this one. And I'm going to add this to my gallery once again. Success. Picture has been added to the gallery. So maybe it didn't take for some reason on that last one. So let's go up and have a look at the gallery now. And there we can see the thumbnails created today, Gemini in here. No, it's not showing this up for some reason. I'll have to check this a little bit later. Let's do a refresh. Oh, there you go. So I just needed to refresh the page. In fact, that I'll talk to the development team because we shouldn't really have to do that. So here we can see we've got my Gemini gallery and 2 images in it. Now, the great things with galleries is I could also have, and that's what I wanted to do. So here's this particular image. I want to add this image. Don't forget, this is already in my Gemini gallery, but I also want to start putting my best open cluster images. And that's what this is. It's an open cluster. So I'm going to add that to create a new gallery. And there it is. So I'm going to add it to that gallery. So the same image, what I'm pointing out here is the same image you can add to multiple galleries. Now, some of you might be saying, well, Paul, why don't you just go over to photo roll or missions and use the filter by object type? Well, I want to only add into galleries my very best images of open star clusters. So hopefully you can see that there's quite a few uses that you can put galleries to. And by the way, the filters work on all of your galleries as well. So I've now got, look at that, 3 galleries tonight. I've tripled the number of galleries I've got. I'm going to hop over to one of them because let's do my Gemini one, because I'm actually going to add some images later onto this because I captured a whole stack of objects, including the stars Pollux and Castor in Gemini, the 2 twins, and I'm going to add them to my constellation gallery. But I also want to share this because this is some of my best images that I've got of Gemini, and all I've got to do is come up to this little eye symbol up here, press that. This is now a public gallery, so you can give anybody the link to that gallery. I can't show it to you because it's off the screen, but you can give anybody the URL direct to that gallery and they can look at your very best images that you've captured in your galleries. Now, I think that is probably about enough. We might pick up on this a little bit later in 15 minutes time when we do the what's up this week, because I've overshot my time a little. But in fact, what we'll do in what's up this week is we'll also talk about the discussion boards and also where you can find out. You know, we've been talking about, oh, you know, the telescope's offline, you know, the Canary Island is offline. How do we know the Canary Island is offline? Well, if you go over to the the telescopes and then the reserve telescopes, don't forget the mission control updates are down here. Sunday night observatory forecast, and it's telling us in here that the Canary Islands will probably be closed. It also, the forecast actually changed today. We thought Chile was going to be closed as well, but in fact, I have seen that that is going to be open. So, and that's going to open in 10 minutes time as well. So anyway, listen, I hope I've shed a little bit of light on how easy it is, first of all, to set up your missions, controlling the Slooh robotic telescopes, but also which telescope is good for which type of objects. And we're going to go into kind of more detail over the weeks on this, and you'll soon pick up when we look at individual images, especially if we have live images to watch as we do this practical astronomy series. We can see what they're good at and what they're not so good at. And in fact, let's do that. Let's actually deliberately set up the same object on the different telescopes, and then we can compare them. So hopefully you also saw how easy it was there to set up galleries. So I've learned a couple of things there tonight. Oh, I should have tested that beforehand, shouldn't I? But look, there you go. I've got 2 galleries set up. And yeah, we'll talk about UTC and the time zone of UTC, or the time standard of UTC, in the What's Up this week coming next. Now, what have we got coming up then later on this week? Well, you haven't got to wait long, have you? It's only 10 minutes time, and we're going to look at what's up this week. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern, 1 a.m. GMT. That's 0100 UTC as well. Then at 9 p.m. Eastern. This is the one not to miss. We've got Constellation Stories with Slooh's storyteller Helen Avery, and she's looking at the constellation of Auriga this week, which I believe is the Charioteer. Now, I have to admit, I know very little about Auriga. I now know a couple of the stars because we added those to the Slough Recommend, the Slough 500s and the Slough Recommends this week. So I know a little bit more about that. So that's tonight. But then, don't forget, Wednesday, the next episode of Dr. Paige Godfrey's Intro to Astronomy course is on Wednesday at 7:30 Eastern. And also, to celebrate solstice, on Thursday, we're hoping to get live views of our sun through the Slooh Solar Telescope on Thursday at the very moment of solstice. How cool will that be? And don't forget, if you ever want to see what's coming up, all you've got to do is go to the live cast, and then you can scroll down here, upcoming live cast. What's up this week? Week 51. My goodness, we're nearly at Christmas, nearly at the end of the year. Then we got Constellation Stories, and you can read more, and you can actually hop over to these pages and let's take a look. Actually, quick spoiler alert: Constellation Stories with Helen tonight. What's she writing about? Yep. Auriga, easiest to identify. It's looking like a good show. Oh, we got the gold dust cluster in there. That is so pretty. Anyway, I know Helen's got some live missions set up during her story. Anyway, I'm going to see you back here in around 10 minutes when we can take a quick look at what's up this week, the best sites to capture in the Slooh telescopes. And don't remember, and please remember, if you're not already a member, please sign up tonight. Hopefully you've seen how easy it is to use the telescopes. You've also seen some of the amazing results that some members get from those telescopes. And just by joining up, you're going to be supporting our mission to teach the world to explore space. And don't forget, if you're a parent, a teacher, or professor, or know any of those people, please check out our new classroom and college astrolab programs. They're going to be big for us in 2018. We're really looking forward to that. Anyway, for now, for about the next 8 minutes, that's all from me, Paul Cox. I'll see you in 8 minutes' time. Bye then.